Alright y'all, so we're going to hop right on into this project. For this project, I'm grabbing a pillowcase. It's one I already have on hand. I use it on my current pillowcase, so I know it's going to fit my pillow I'm going to be using. And so placing my fabric on the board, I have my fabric set up on the fold. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're going to avoid a bottom seam, because why do that extra sewing if you don't need to, and also most pillowcases don't have a seam at that bottom edge, so we're going to make our pillowcases just like the ones you buy in the store. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch on either edge, and the reason why I'm doing 3/4 of an inch is because I'm going to put a French seam in here. If you want to serge these edges, you are free to do that. I'm adding a French seam because this is a beginner's project and I want to make sure that no matter what kind of equipment anybody has, they are able to complete this project with just a standard sewing machine. If you have a serger, I would suggest doing about a 1/2 inch, and then you can follow everything else the same way. But for this project, I'm going to do a French seam. And so at the top, I'm just trying to figure out how wide I want that top edge to be. So I'm adding 4 inches to my top seam, and this is just going to be what I'm going to turn over at the end to get a nice, clean, professional finish at the bottom, at the top edge. So whatever width you want to do that, but I'm doing 4 inches. And so now we're just going to cut out our work. I'm using a rotary cutter. I just like using it when I'm dealing with straight edges. You get a really nice straight cut. Just please be careful. They're super sharp. I would know. I've cut myself plenty of times. And for some reason, this bleeds a lot when you cut yourself with these. So please, if you use a rotary cutter, be careful. Otherwise, just go ahead and use your standard pair of scissors and cut your pillowcase out. Alright y'all, so now that it is cut out, we are going to turn our fabric right sides out. And this seems really wrong, I know, for those of you who have never done a French seam before, but you're actually going to sew the edge right side out first before we turn it the other way around. And this is going to encase your raw edge inside, making a really clean edge. I know it sounds really weird, it's really hard to explain, but once you see it done, it's super easy. So just pin your edges as flat as you can get them. I like to use these little wonder clips. I think these are awesome. They work really great. They hold your fabric really taut, so I don't have to worry about it slipping or my pins coming out, because when you deal with these kind of fabrics, they tend to fall off a lot. So I like using these. But whatever pins or tools you have on hand to keep your fabric in place, use that. If you're feeling really professional and you're just like got it all down, yo, and you don't even need no pins, you go girl. I'm gonna use me these clips and we're gonna get this work done. So once you get your project clipped together or pinned together, we are going to sew on either edge. So when you're sewing, you want to make sure that your tension is at the right level. For this project, my machine normally can do about 4 between 3 and 4, but for this particular project, I had to reduce my tension all the way down to a 1 to stop the gathering and the puckering from happening in my fabric. So just grab some scrap fabric, play around with your tension to make sure you have it right before you begin, because otherwise every last one of those puckers are going to show up in your pillowcase once it's finished. So then you just sew down all the way down either side of your work, and once you've sewn those down, we will continue. All right, y'all, so now that we've gotten both sides of our pillowcase sewn, I'm going to grab some scissors and I'm going to begin trimming off those frayed edges on the sides. As I stated before, with French seams, it encases that edge so that you don't see any of those frayed bits inside your pillowcase when you're done. But if you leave these frayed edges on, they may not, you might sew some of those into your work and it will show on the outside. And for me, seeing those frayed little edges just haunts my dreams as I'm trying to sleep. So just try to make sure you cut off those frayed bits. It'll save you so much stress later on when you're looking at your pillowcase and you're starting to see these little pieces in there. It annoys me so much to see that. So I just go ahead and I cut them and trim them off. And then I know that they're going to be properly sealed inside my pillowcase once I finish. So once you've got your pillowcase nice and trimmed and all those edges gone, go ahead and flip your pillowcase wrong side out. And we are going to iron our pillowcase flat. You don't have to iron, this is kind of like an extra step, but I just like to kind of pull the seam outward just to make sure that I don't get the seam kind of tucked in a little bit too much. As you can see there, I'm kind of like pulling at the seam and kind of ironing and pressing that edge flat. That way I can just make sure that when I sew, especially when you're dealing with this fabric, it moves around on you a lot, so pressing it just kind of helps keep everything in place a lot better than if you were just to go straight to your machine. But this is optional, you don't have to do it. It's just another step that I feel like really helps me make a nice clean pillowcase. So once I get that side done, I'll flip it over, get the other edge done. And once that's done, I will take it over to my sewing table, which is actually my coffee table right now, believe it or not. And I will pin them down just as another secure measure. But like I said, this is optional. It's just what I like to do. It just helps me feel better. So that's what I'm doing. All right, so now it's back at my table and I am going to clip away. And again, this is optional. You do not have to clip. I'm going to clip just for peace of mind. Once you've got it all clipped, it's time to sew either edge once again. And this time I'm going to sew about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. The first time I used a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and this time I'm using a 1/2 inch. So if you know, we added 3/4 of an inch. So I'm pretty much just enclosing, I'm using up every bit of that 3/4 that I added, and I am enclosing that seam we made inside of this stitch. You can, a lot of people do make smaller French seams, but I just like the security of knowing that that seam on the inside is completely closed in and you don't see anything. So just make sure you check and confirm that you're not showing any of that raw edge inside of your pillowcase. And if you've got it right and you're doing it and you don't see any, then you're free to keep sewing. Alright y'all, so we have just finished sewing in our French seams. That is all there is to French seams. They're very simple. Like I said, it's hard to explain when you just say it, but when you see it done, it's actually very, very simple. So the last step in the process to making our pillowcase is just to finish off the top edge. So as you can remember, I added 4 inches to the top. And so we're basically going to turn this project under twice. I'm going to turn it under a 1/2 inch to start with. And then once I've gotten that turned under turned under the 1/2 inch, I'll turn it under again later. But for now, we're just going to do a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to show you guys pretty much how I do it. Well, I don't like putting pins in it that much because it just takes forever. I actually prefer to take it straight over to the ironing board and measure as I iron. But for this one, since it's a beginner's project, I'm going to show you how to pin all the way down first. And then once I've shown you it this way, I will go to my iron and press that 1/2 inch all the way around. And then for the next part, I will show you how I actually do how I actually turn under my work. So as you can see, I'm putting a pin there, and then I'll measure over a little bit and put another pin on and on and on until I get all the way back around. Alright you guys, so as you can see, I have just turned it under and pressed it the 1/2 inch all the way around. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it under one more time, but this time we are going to turn it under 3.5 inches. And the 3.5 inches that we're going to do is pretty much going to use up the 4 inches I added to the top of this. So turning it under 3.5 inches. Again, there's the way you can do it of, just measuring 3.5 inches, pinning, measure 3.5, pin all the way around. But I'm going to show you how to do it the way that I normally do it, because it's just killing 2 birds with 1 stone and it's a lot faster. So right here, you can either pin like I'm showing you and then press it, or since you're going to have to press it anyways, I'm just going to take those pins out. And I pin on either side of my work just once so I can make sure that it's level on both sides. And then I'm going to move the fabric around and kind of finesse it to get it to where I need it to be at 3.5 inches. And when I get to that 3.5 inch measurement that I'm looking for, I will go ahead and iron it. So you don't have to do it this way. Don't feel like you need to do it this way. But just for me, I just prefer to just go a little bit faster, and this is much faster, much quicker. Also, just note that if you are using pins in your work, you want to grab either the flat head, all like they're all metal pins, or go for the ones that I'm using, which are glass head pins. Please do not use plastic pins with this hot iron. It will melt straight onto your iron and you'll ruin it. And so now coming over to the sewing machine, I am going to sew all the way around my work. As you can see from the beginning, I moved my needle all the way over to the edge, and I am just sewing around that top edge. The point that I'm using, as you can see, there's just a little window there where you can see my needle going through, and I have my fabric lined up against the edge of that little, I guess, window or opening in my press in my foot, so that you can see, I can see where I'm sewing, and my needle is just to the right of that edge. And then I just sew all the way around until I get to the end of my work. And then, as always, when you get to the end of the work, make sure that you backstitch so that your stitches are secure, which backstitch is just going back and forth a couple times. And once you're done, your pillowcase is finished, y'all. Alright, y'all, so we have reached the end of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and like this video. And also, please subscribe to my channel. I'll be having more videos like this out shortly. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will get back to y'all on all your questions. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.